I wanted to pick up on a theme that you mentioned towards the end and ask this to Peter Loftus, and it has to do with this balance of efficacy and safety. And the profession of journalism does much of the communicating to the public about these issues of balance, of risk and benefit. And I'm wondering, from my perspective, it often appears that the risk makes the good story and that the benefit is not emphasized sufficiently, but maybe I'll be corrected. I'm wondering how, as someone who's very high up in your profession, how you see the handling of that issue and what the responsibilities of the profession are in that regard, and maybe give us a roadmap to how that should be handled.
Sure. Well, first of all, I can really only speak from my own experiences. I don't want to point fingers at any particular kind of media, but I guess I can see why you think that, and I think there is an element in the media of maybe responding more to something that could be a scare or something. I think of, if you watch local news, sometimes they'll have a teaser that says, you won't believe the germs that they found in your sponge in the kitchen. Stay tuned after the break. Again, I don't want to point fingers. I think I can say that I and other reporters in my organization, I think, take the issue very seriously, and I just want to give you some ideas of the kind of things that we consider. First of all, I think there's an important role for the media as sort of an independent watchdog to convey these issues, because the other institutions involved, have obvious interests, whether it's a regulator or a manufacturer or product liability lawyer. These are the different sources of information. I think we try to rely on certain filters to make sure that we're handling it in a responsible way, and that could be tending to pay more attention to some of the more reputable medical journals, and so if there is a study coming out that raises an issue of risk benefit, and it's in one of those journals, we're going to feel comfortable reporting it, and but also not just relying only on the content of the article, but trying to get other experts to weigh in. And one of the things that, we obviously when we if a regulator raises an issue, obviously that's something that we have to report. But I can see how in certain circumstances, that can make things messy, because I think in the last couple of years the FDA has erred on the side of, I think they've increased their communications about drug safety issues earlier in the process than they may have in the past, and I'm saying that with a more limited time window than a lot of the people up on this panel. But and so, what if they raise an issue? What if they say, we're looking into this or that for this drug? The media reports it, it's out there, and then 6 months down the line, they might say, you know what, we looked into it and there's no problem. And they've done that, and it's, I kind of leave that to everyone to sort of decide whether that's a good thing or not. But I feel like, we're in a position where we're gonna report that. We're gonna report both of those news events. But I can also see how, maybe that creates, I've heard the term alarm fatigue in the hospital setting. Maybe that creates that among the general public, if they're always hearing, well, there might be this issue, and then down the line they hear there might not be. So I think, then it is our duty to report those things, and if we can, add context. You know, if we talk to a bunch of doctors, or if we're aware of research that sheds light on that issue that the FDA is looking into, then that's our duty to report it. You know, and I think we try to be wary of the anecdote, even though I think we need to use anecdotes to sort of humanize stories and maybe illustrate a research finding. But it can be tough because you have cases where, you know, maybe someone famous, something bad happens to them, and it's after they took a drug, and so then there's, you know, early reports that, well, maybe this is an issue, and so we have to kind of decide, do we report that right away or do we wait? You know, sometimes that initial anecdote does turn into something substantial. And I guess it's always our duty to report, I think, you know, if we are reporting an issue, a safety concern, or vice versa, a benefit, to report whether the source of that information, you know, what their interest is. Is it the manufacturer making a claim about efficacy or safety? Like I said earlier, is it a product liability lawyer making that claim? And I guess, you know, so I think there are a lot of nuances, and I think we try our best to be mindful of those. And you mentioned the risk-benefit equation. I do think that's a difficult concept to convey as a lay reporter, you know, writing for a lay audience, because you know, and one thing that just comes to mind because it's been in the news are the diet drugs that have been before the FDA. You know, there's this concept that because these drugs, no matter what you approve them for, they're going to get used more widely than their intended population. That shifts the risk-benefit equation, whereas, you know, an oncology drug is a different story. And I think I am mindful of that, and I think I, you know, sometimes try to convey that in stories. But I think that's a tough issue to convey. And I guess the only other point I would make is just that I think we rely on. It's good if the main sources of information about drug safety issues, whether it's the company or a regulator, is as transparent as possible. And obviously, I have an interest in that as a reporter, because that gives me something to write about. But I do think that, you know, there have been documented cases where the parties involved haven't always been as transparent as they could have been or should have been, and so I think that even though, you know, I think relative to other industries, the pharma industry can be transparent in a lot of ways, you know, so I guess I would say more so in recent years. I think there's always room for improvement. So that would, I think, help us do our jobs better.